All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Matt Booth. West Coast meets Far East in an artist and jewellery designer, Matt Booth's aesthetic. While deployed to Asia as a US Infantry Marine, Booth found himself overwhelmed by the rich culture he experienced there. After returning to the States, Booth was introduced to the thriving silver scene in Los Angeles, California, while working at the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Boulevard. It was this fusion of Asian influence and obsession with custom jewellery that inspired Booth to create his own brand in 2003. With the vision of an artist and the tenacity of a Marine, Matt Booth began blending the traditional Asian characters and motifs he first encountered during his tour of duty with a heavy dose of Los Angeles grit to create the conceptual backbone of Room 101. In 2009, he realised the launch of Room 101 Cigars in the early stages of the development of the craft segment of the premium tobacco space worldwide, earning Booth time and grade in this premium category as a band disruptor, and in 2017, once again in the craft spirit space with the launch of Room 101 Gin. As Booth's vision constantly evolves, the Room 101 brand has become the go-to for exceptional, custom-made pieces and craft lifestyle goods, making Room 101 a global yet underground lifestyle brand unlike any others in the market today. And in this interview, we discuss the art of creativity, building an authentic brand, how he's been so successful compared to other brands, and so much more. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. It's not often I get Josh Burnett hitting me up on Instagram telling me I need to interview somebody. But 2 minutes in reading your Instagram profile, I thought, yeah, this is the guy I need on. But for the few who maybe don't recognise the name, how would you give a cliche answer to who you are and what you have achieved in this small life that you've lived so far? Because you've done an amazing amount of things and you just keep going from strength to strength. But how do you tell people who you are?
You know, it's kind of funny, man, as someone that's out there and part of my job is to be proactively out there at all times, beating the drum for our company and what it is that we do and what I do. I'm probably not the best at it. It seems a little, still, coming from my background, I guess you could say it still feels like to talk about oneself feels a little bit full of yourself, right? So, I always have a challenge, I think, when it comes to identifying who it is that I actually am and what I do. I definitely would say I'm a serial disruptor. I have, I've created a lifestyle brand solely from concept and continue to evolve it. I guess you would also say that I'm a serial creator, or a serial creative. That's really kind of the,
I like it.
I guess that's how I describe it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
It's a good life when you struggle to sort of define who you are. You've got like many different sort of interests and passions. I mean, you've got music, you've got the cigars, you've got the new line of gin, you've got your jewelry range, and you've got like your tattoos and stuff like that. And I think that's what I was so keen to have you on, was because you've built it from scratch. You've never gone down I'm going to sell this because it's a fast back. I'm not going to, I'm stepping on my morals because I want to do this. You've just done it your own way. You've kept it authentic. But when you were younger, you said you were going down a slippery slope. You were getting close to getting, your collar fell and possibly go down and, getting arrested. How did your sort of transition from that to the Marines to becoming the guy that we all know and love now happen?
I definitely wasn't I wasn't living the most positive lifestyle, and I wasn't headed in the best direction. I think a lot of people in that period of their life are, feeling the same way, overcome by hormones and angst and lack of direction. It can be a very confusing time, I think, for a lot of people. And I think for a lot of people, I always say I survived myself. I survived that period of my life. I made some decisions to aggressively reboot and reroute my life's direction almost instantaneously. Kind of coming to the understanding that, my future probably was not so shiny and bright and needed to reboot. I saw the Marine Corps, and specifically the infantry enlistment as an option to do so. And, probably quietly in the back of my mind, I probably understood to some degree that I probably needed, my head to be removed from my own ass, or possibly arse, as you might call it over there with that vernacular. Um, but that's what I did. I pulled the plug. I pulled the ejection lever, and I enlisted in the Marine Corps Infantry. And within a week of making that decision, I was, on a plane going back to San Diego to begin boot camp.
And do you think the sort of military helped you kind of like cow all the BS you were doing and just made you kind of realize and forge, your sort of true authentic self? Because I think a lot of guys are like that, it's like, oh, I was a bad little shit when I was younger. That means I can't do anything now. And I think I've had quite a few people on recently who've shown that, you can be a tearaway and still change your life. And I think that it's trying to get people to realize that they can change their life on a whim. They just need to get over it. How did you kind of make that transition, do you think?
Well, I mean, the Marine Corps gave me 4 years, right? It gave me 4 years to, 4 years of aggressive removal from life as I knew it. A tremendously, let's just call it overbearing amount of structure and instruction. And, I think it gave me time to grow up, man. It debited me from, I guess you'd call it civilian life for a period of 4 years, and really gave me that time frame to process and reset. And I to this day, I remember vividly the moment that I realized, like, okay, I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go back to life and do something productive with myself. And I remember that moment vividly, and it just so happened that directly trailing out of my enlistment, one of my staff sergeants, Darren Bibbs, that had, I think, looked out for us the most during our enlistment, had gone to work for a boutique executive protection firm in Los Angeles called Gavin DeBecker and Associates. And they made a habit of hiring Marines, specifically infantry, I think because of, our level of tolerance for hours and being able to function with exhaustion and things of that nature effectively with exhaustion. And I, although I had lost touch with him momentarily, I remembered that that's where he was going to work. And so I did a little research and got in touch with that firm. And, the day after I left active duty, I was retained by that firm as basically as a bodyguard.
It was quite a career path. I mean, you did a lot of sort of like grafting jobs when you were younger, but I loved that thing that you said that, your eyes were always open. You were always watching like the performers and the top performers you worked with, looking at them for what made them tick, what techniques and habits, and, you analyze the top performers.
Habits, for sure.
How
Habits.
did you see?
Yes.
How did you see that? Like, what was it that you were looking for people, and what kind of habits did you adopt that you kind of used in your sort of going forward? Because you had the graft, you had the creativity. What is it that you think you needed at that point to become the Matt that you would become?
Well, I mean, look, all of these things built off of the previous foundation. This was all evolutionary. And after I got out, I took that job in executive protection, but I also did many things. I did sound and lighting almost on an apprenticeship level, basically at the Whiskey, which is a known venue in Los Angeles, music venue. I interned on my own time at two different record labels, one major and one independent, because I wanted the contrast in experience, and also, of course, played bass in several different bands and got accustomed to also shouldering a consistent rehearsal schedule while holding these different things together the best I could. And I think my greatest influences that I would come to understand were much later on, as it, I guess they would say, sunk in, if you would, were some of the clients that I worked for and provided security for in the early 2000s. They were the heads of major entertainment companies, record labels, public personalities, things of that nature. And, the one thing, although the intimates of their and intricacies of their personal personalities were unique, just as all people are, there were some universal traits that all of them shared without question. And one of them was that they were up before the sun, properly exercised, and on the phone with the East Coast by the time the East Coast woke up. And then they were gone to handle their day to day as it was. And then they were back typically after the sun had gone down. And this was a constant every day, every week, forever, into perpetuity. They were animals, like nonstop. And I, at the time in the beginning, I remember thinking, like, being a person that had only at the time worked for other people, mind you, I thought I would never give that much of myself to someone else, and that, I believe, it was, that thought really was the genesis for what I couldn't illustrate at the time, but what I would tell you now was entrepreneurial pursuit, to create my own path in life and in business.
Yeah. It's definitely missing from a lot of people. I think life's got too easy. One of my pet things of saying is, we can order a date online, you can order food to your door, you can order somebody to come and pick you up from your door. We don't have the challenges, we don't have the wars that we used to have. So what was the point that you thought, okay, I can actually work for myself? Do you think there's sort of parameters that indicate if you're an employee versus an employer or an entrepreneur even? Was there something that made you think I could go on my own now?
Well, I mean, although we're not face to face, we are fiber optically connected, and you, sir, are sitting directly across from one of the most stubborn people you have ever encountered in your entire life. I'll guarantee you that. And I think that
you haven't met my dad.
Well, look, man, we're out there. It's not, unique to only me, but it's definitely a character trait that over the years I have. Of course, you are never a master. We are in a game we're in a game where no one is a master, but you begin to do your best to get a handle on and at least try to master these elements. And I've tried to leverage that element of my personality to best serve me in my business endeavors and pursuits, right? To, when people ask me, I think the picture, this picture has been built in over 20 years. None of this happens overnight. And so while I've been quietly in the woodshed, continuing to foster the growth of my brand and my craft, plural, right? At some point I pop up on someone's radar and they think that, my brand came out of nowhere, right? But it's quite frankly very much the opposite. I think a good friend of mine said it best. He said, you're going to be the most amazing overnight success 15 to 20 years in the making. If he's right, then we're right about on track. And now I'm on your show, so there you go.
I always love that sort of thing. It's like Messi. I was the overnight sensation. I've only been doing it for like 18 odd years. Like training every day for it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, something I was very keen to have you on. The reason was because you were very authentic. You've said in your story, that you never got a hand up. You never went after the cheap sale. You never followed like what the masses were doing. Like hawking the belly fat removal tea, or making the easy. I mean, you just stayed to your creative sort of outlook, and you followed your identity, and you didn't follow societal pressures. Probably a better way of putting it. How do you think people can start doing that? Find their own style and not chase what the masses are doing? Because you seem to be, everything about you is authentic, and it's you as a person put into a culture, into a business. How did you do that? How can we tap into that own level in ourselves?
That's an interesting proposition because I would completely agree with you. My brand and my branded products are effectively a direct output from myself. It's almost like you're mainlining me in product form, right? Or philosophically in brand form, right?
Mm.
And one of my greatest, I think, strengths and weaknesses simultaneously is an obscene amount of honesty. And it has not done me the greatest favors in business when it comes to negotiation, right? Because I just want what I want, and I want other people to operate fairly and transparently, which, this is like a veritable minefield of behavior that's less than that constantly, but I believe that that's how my message sings through in everything that I do, because it's very raw and it's very real, and everything is done in accordance to my touch directly. Um, and I think that that's why, our brand and our products reek of authenticity, because they are.
And did you struggle at all with like going from employee to entrepreneur? Because I think we get that sort of fear that people kind of go, "Oh no, you're going to get laughed at. No, don't be silly. No one will buy it." And I've noticed a lot of top performers feel it anyway, but will do it. They kind of understand the fear's always going to be there, but they're just going to go, fuck it. May as well just go for it. Life's going to pass by anyway. How did you did you feel that fear, or were you sort of so confident in your sort of creative journey that you just knew you were going to connect to like-minded people who are looking for that in their lives?
Well, I think a lot of it, you have to have faith. You have to have faith in yourself and the direction that you are setting out upon, because I felt very early on, I said, I have this brand concept that in many ways, as a multi-category, multi-class brand, was very much inspired by the Alfred Dunhill of 1950, 1960 timeframe. However, done completely with my twist, my direction, and a completely different flavor and aesthetic dressing. The skeletal structure, nomenclature of this brand was inspired by Alfred Dunhill in many ways, not entirely, but in many ways. And I felt that very strongly, that I was going to create something and compose something that was so attractive that someday someone else would want it and want to partner with me in a greater way, right? To take my message further than I could on my own. And you never know. Opportunities like that could lie right around the corner at this point for us. But I was terrified simultaneously because I had no idea what I was doing. Other than I knew what I was doing in terms of my dedication to building the brand, but I had no industry connection in any industry that I've ever entered into, and many of them are craft based, and there's a system of gatekeepers in place to actually keep new participants out, right? So it's not even that you just want to saunter in somewhere and try to activate your creative impulses related to a new craft. There's actually people that are actively working, or in some cases, regulation that's actively working to keep you out, right? So I've basically fought my way into all those spaces. I don't know if that adequately answers your question. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I feel like I'm covering it simultaneously.
No, I mean that's what my tagline for this podcast should be. I ramble like hell. I mean it's something I'm always keen to speak to people who have done it themselves. Like because we hear this like guys who multi-billionaires and they're talking about how they established their companies, and you think they're so far away from what it actually was that they probably can't remember all the stuff they did, all the fixes, all the kind of hacks and tips that
Mm-hmm.
could change somebody starting out now. And you've always done it your own way. You've used your sort of Asian influence to help your jewelry design. You've gone and found the products, and you've worked only with companies that have your sort of ethical kind of considerations and outlook. How did you find, like, with skills gaps, and like knowledge kind of gaps? How did you find the right people to start making these connections and networking? And how did you find that initial kind of, like you were maybe, did you get screwed over at all? Or did you find that when you spoke, you weren't business speaking at start? Or, what was the journey like for you?
Look, man, a lot of lessons that anyone is ever going to learn in their path in building their own business are going to be pain-based learning evolutions. And many times that pain is financial or being put on the underside of a deal, right? In the art of deal making. I have fought through a great deal of things that I feel would have terminated even a more viable contender's will to continue or ability to continue based on how the pendulum would swing for them in any specific set of arrangements that they might have made for their business, right? So one by one, continuing to with tireless effort continue to um, put myself out there and our brand out there. um, Ultimately people begin to come, right? I mean, it sounds corny as fuck, but the saying, if you build it they will come, isn't exactly false. You have to have the right nucleus, you have to have the right message, but even people with phenomenal brands fail miserably. It has to be, they say, there's a saying, right place, right time, right? And somebody just hits it because they're in the right place, right time. Well, yes, that's true, but there are other critical elements in that equation too. Like you could say right place, right time, right person, right place, right time, right brand, right? There's this other uh, element that's critical, and that's the operator, I think, many times.
Because I mean, your product line is awesome. It's
Thank you.
like awesome quality, and I loved how you've talked about how you took you sort of personalized your products from the 1950s, but gave them a modern sort of twist. And
Hmm.
do you think COVID has kind of brought about a realization of people now that we need to have more sort of home comfort? And can I kind of see them in the like the Draper kind of sitting there with the scotch and the sitting having the smoking cigar. I could easily see your products fitting in those sorts of things. But then
Hmm.
when I look at your media, you've got the cool graphics, but you've still got the classy and classic kind of boxes for the cigars, or the gin looks like it could fit into any kind of bar, any kind of time period. How do you go about creating that got that feel, but bringing a modern twist, that contemporary sort of flair added to it?
I love to touch product. I love it's one of my most favorite components of everything that I do is creating trade dress for our products, right? And creating their outward or aesthetic representation, if you will. Really creating a stance or a command presence for them is really what it is. Because I think that uh, presentation communicates personality, and I like my products to communicate a uniform personality or physical representation of our brand as a whole. You know, um, I kind of have a knack for it. And there are a lot of things that I do that connect people to our products in a way that generate their willingness or eagerness to transact for those products. And I think that that's key. You see a lot of shortfall out there as it applies to anyone's product design. And then some people like absolutely fucking nailed it, like Apple, like the way that their products look and packaging has sold all of their products for them. This functionality is almost secondary, right?
No, definitely. I mean, when you get a box for Apple, they've got teams that actually work on how it's going to open and how it's going to look to somebody. Just the packaging, never mind like what the phone's going to do, and and you think like the level of detail that when I look at like your social media, your websites and things like that, and I see reviews and journal pieces on you. Every time I've seen somebody wearing a bit of your jewelry, they're all from different ranges, different ages, different genders, different kind of like social economic groups and stuff like that. But 100%. It all looks like it fits them. And and it's the same with the gin. It's the same with cigars. It's people who like the classy cigars, but people who like the modern ones, people who like the variety, the difference in their life. Everybody seems to fit in to your brand. And I love that community you've established with it. How do you go about that? Like, how do you go about creating a tribe? Is it like you said, you just create every day and people will come and find you? Or what have you learned about marketing by doing this kind of approach?
Well, look, man, I mean, I have always been, and even, personally, before I was about to say a professional person, and then I stopped myself because I don't want to get carried away calling myself a professional, but, I have always been completely and totally universally inclusive. All are welcome in my house, period. Unless you're a cocksucker, then you can stay outside. But I am universally welcoming, and my brand carries that philosophy through me. That channels through me as well. So community and culture related to Room 101, albeit underground in nature, I think, in many ways, is reflective, I think, best when we get together, for example, for brand functions, right? Like if we have a brand after party, after one of the fashion shows or the cigar shows, if you walked around the typically would be like in a club or like a very high-end, smoking club. But I mean, from table to table, you would see such vast difference in the dynamics between the people that you would almost question whether or not they could even get along, right? Like they would definitely not, you would not associate them with each other on, upon cursory inspection on what they look like, right? But this has far more to do about who they are as people and their tastes and interests rather than what they look like, right? Because that's just their packaging. That's their personal trade dress, right? That's their aesthetics, right? But they have an affinity for something a little bit more special than pedestrian, something, that they're someone that, maybe even if they couldn't afford it, that they would aspire to have a custom made suit versus an off the rack, just to relate it to a clothing item, These are people with specialty interests, whether it be, a whiskey collection, or maybe they like to fly fish, it's just something off the beaten path of normalcy and has a specialty twist to it that I think is the key genetic component in the person that could potentially find their way into some level of enchantment with our brand.
Because I remember reading a few things, and it said that you moved away from the exhibitions, the stage, the kind of industry stage shows. You went and found like the nightclub scenes, like you're talking about. You had the parties that kind of brought people together. And I can't remember where I read it, but you'd said you wanted Room 101 to be like a house that nobody was rejected from, that everybody was welcomed. And I love that approach, that kind of look. And you've certainly built that brand. But you've said that I think it was in an interview, I can't remember the exact one, you said, creation is the vice that I support via commercialization. Can you go into a little bit about that? I mean,
Yeah. No, oh, you
I
did.
love I love the quote.
You looked me up a little bit, huh? Okay. That sounds like something
Oh,
I'd
I'm a
say.
stalker, man. I'm telling you.
Well, I like, well, now we have the internet, so it's, you can be my own personal NSA agent any day. Um, yeah, no, that's exactly true. And that's a sentiment that I have expressed, I think, multiple times. It's like, I love the creative process, whether it's package design, sitting with one of the master blenders that I work with at one of the many cigar factories I work with, and collaboratively composing a blend formula that's non-traditional but still very pleasing and intriguing. Taking a twist on not only the traditional craft of jewelry making, but even when we started, you could say that it was done in the vein of a more air quotes biker style, but it was done with all these Japanese deities, and then again morphed into more of a modern design direction. I love to make shit. I love to make shit. I have ideas that have kept me awake for so many years that I don't even have the time to execute them, within my own lifetime at this point. And so I sell what I make to continue to support my creative vice, right? So I said, fuck it, if I'm going to do this, I might as well at least attempt or make best efforts to make a living from it.
Well, I love that. I mean, I really intrigued like how deep and sort of analytical and sort of introspective you go with a lot of it, like on your social media. It really makes you think. You can take it as kind of cool, hip, look at the pictures, look at the quality of the products, or you can actually get really into it and really think about things. And I love how, like, just listening to interviews with you, your social media matches your interview style, matches the videos I've seen, matches on the other people's social media.
Mm-hmm.
What we get is you in a company form, in
100%.
a brand form. And I love that. It's so rare to see. I mean, have you noticed like a movement over the last sort of 10, 20 years now that consumers, I hate myself for using these kind of phrases, are now getting fed up of these kind of big companies? They want to know the story, be part of the movement, to
Mm-hmm.
have a kind of a rebirth for high quality products, but
Yeah.
know where it's come from, know the story.
Well, look, man, I mean, it's no secret. The way we make things is not the way that you should be going about manufacturing products if you were going to commercialize them at volume, right? We do it technically how you're not supposed to do it if you want to make, um, volume level moves with your business. I mean, they say, what do they say? They say, you sell to the rich, you eat with the masses. You sell to the masses, you eat with the rich, right? And so,
Awesome.
but I think more and more, and I have noticed this, and obviously this is my business to notice it. I would have to echo your sentiments. I would say that it's been a consistent shift and a movement to where there are people that greatly appreciate the currency of authenticity if it's flowing through a brand or a product, and some of them are even getting to a point where they feel, and maybe this isn't something they could illustrate outwardly, but I think this is something maybe a little bit more on the subconscious tip with some people. I think that they feel a responsibility to invest into um, brand entities and companies that could be considered air quotes real deal or family owned or human owned, and not just like a sterile synthetic mass corporation type situation, right? And I saw that a lot. I saw that amplified during the period where COVID was hitting. The restrictions and the lockdowns were hitting the heaviest. People that were engaging in what I feel is a little bit of escapism type spending with us were doing so because they knew that our brand is a true craft brand and a family owned. and family operated business.
Because COVID was certainly one of those times I think people realized, like, this facade of bullshit that we hold, like celebrities like the Kardashians and all, how stupid all that is and what matters now. And I think that's kind of realizing that we want the home comforts, but we also want to have a product that we can be proud of, that we can be part of it, like you're saying. And it's difficult to kind of look at some of these companies now and see what they've been doing over these years and letting people go on a whim to keep their money high. And, it's like, I think we're definitely now looking for companies that can do this. But how did COVID shape your business? Because you would have had a massive surge for people wanting having a drink at night, having a smoke, having like a little kind of pick me up, like maybe buying one of your jewelry ranges, etc. How did you find that also compared to, you would have maybe had difficulty getting in stock to make the items? Maybe manufacturers were like slow production because they had so many staff off or restrictions and, like the safe distances. How did you find that juggling of extra demand, but maybe tighter kind of abilities to get stock in, etc., when you needed it?
Well, all of that, all of the aforementioned elements that you just rattled off were all happening simultaneously. We manufacture our jewelry product in our studios at the corner of 7th and Broadway, downtown Los Angeles, where we've been making them for 20 years, on the same production floor that I apprenticed, so, and learned basic bench and casting skills. Now, during the initial stages of COVID lockdown, our entire building that we operate out of, we were locked out of for 6 to 8 weeks, and so we make everything to order. Like, we don't stock an inventory, it's ordered, and then we manufacture it and deliver it to the client. And so I said, as it relates to our jewelry business, I said, how does the made to order brand survive when we can't effectively make to order? And so what we did is we launched our basically like our vault collection, which, over 20 years, we had amassed a pretty impressive cachet of prototype samples, things that never became production or were modified when they became an actual production model, or, custom pieces that we had done for folks that had, exchanged or had them modified, and they were done in such a way that I had to rebuild the entire piece, and so we had, diamond pieces, gold pieces. I mean, a treasure trove of items, and we sold them all. We sold them all as this is one-off, studio sample. It's only available in this size, this length, etc. And we sold it all.
Just thinking of like the bronze gun that you made, the replica of the Glock.
Oh yeah. It was super badass, man. And of course, during that time, I had a lot of extra time to pursue other design desires, right? That bronze Glock was one of many things that I had ideas for, and just honestly, kind of when you're triaging your time, at the end of the day, didn't have time, and so I was able to really play and do a lot more in the design and creative departments that I normally do. If you flip over to tobacco, there was an explosive surge in consumption in the premium tobacco category and spirit category. I mean, the off-premise business, because restaurants and bars were closed, so the only things that were open were grocery stores, liquor stores, etc. The alcohol, the spirit business had a surge of over 400% in 2020, in sales, in growth, with half of the places that they normally pipe their products through closed, and the tobacco business, we as an industry and as a community experienced a boom in our industry that the last time we had seen any surge in business of that caliber was in the 90s, so for like I referred to it as escapism spending or escapism based products, COVID was nothing short of completely explosive. And of course, simultaneously, in the same breath, my heart goes out to, my friends in the restaurant business and people
Mm.
that suffered, because of what was going on. A lot of those people, of course, with the entrepreneurial spirit, morphed and pivoted into other directions. And, I think there were a great deal of businesses that were born out of this period as well. Side hustles or pet projects that actually got to take pole position in people's lives, and they realized a year later, oh wait, I've already replaced my monthly income that I had to go work for someone else to earn. Some of your other sentiments. I mean, you talk about companies discarding people quickly and whatnot. I mean, I think it's long since been verified and understood that in the 1950s, employers took care of their employees and vice versa. And if you dedicated your life to a company, you would be taken care of. That world dissolved underneath our feet in the 80s. That's long since been gone. Um, Although we operate our company very differently at Room 101, we're definitely not Pepsi Cola. I can only
Yeah.
affect a very small, a very small community of people, but we do operate our business, I think, a bit differently and take care of our people differently. But that's the exception, not the rule today.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
It's maybe something that the world needs more of. It's like the old-fashioned values of business with a modern twist, like you're doing with your products. I mean, it certainly, it was great to see, and I loved how, like, in your Instagram, you talk about like how you like to create every day. There's pictures of you in the room where you're, like, the lab where you're making and you're tweaking and you're surrounded by tools and all that sort of stuff. But I get the impression, like, I think you said you would never leave if they did lock the door, like chase you out and lock the door. How did you then go from the creative small businessman to making the lifestyle brand, but realize, and getting the uncool stuff done, like finding the guy that does the taxes, the accounting, finding the team, the leadership? How did you find about putting all that together to make this lifestyle brand, and not just something that you can sell a piece or here or there to pay for your music career, but actually to think, I can make this into a platform to start changing things?
Yeah.
How
Well,
did
I
you
mean,
make that transition?
well, I mean that transition. I think if I was to be very open and honest with you, I think that uh, although I'm in a constant state of learning and absorption, that transitory state I don't think ever stops. I think you're more in a constant state of evolution. You surround yourself with people of a certain caliber as a byproduct of the moves that you're making, and one person will refer you to their accountant. Their accountant will refer you to a lawyer. That lawyer will refer you to a tax attorney. And it's like, and as much as I am a creative director and I am a conductor really for all of our products in terms of their design and structure of collections and, you know, uh, even the design of our product programming and how we, address and support our retail partners. I am also I also leverage creativity on a daily basis in terms of the way the business is managed on the back end. You know, this is a full blown creative exercise. And we offer product categories cohesively as a house brand that no one else in the entire world does. At the level that we have our products commercialized, unless there's something going on that I'm not aware of, and I think I would be aware of it, there is no other brand in the world like ours. And it's for good reason, because it's fucking difficult, man. Like there are, for example, regulations in the EU that prevent a brand. They call them brand sharing regulations, and you're prohibited from selling a tobacco product or a tobacco accessory, tobacco related product that carries the same brand as another product and vice versa. They can't share. But there are ways to tailor your branding to accommodate cohesion, right? And so, and that's how we and companies like Davidoff are able to operate in multiple categories in the EU, right? And I don't believe we're that far off from regulation like this being activated in the United States as well. So our business is completely tailored in a way that accommodates these things, and that in itself is a creative exercise.
And when you're sort of creating this as a lifestyle brand, and you're now looking at this as a sort of platform to change lives as much, because I noticed that with a lot of top performers, they like to look and go, how can I delegate this? How can I find the people to fill in these gaps and let me do what I need to do to find the people that can do X, Y, Z? But how then do you think, okay, I need to go on to the next part of this? Like, you brought in a new gin, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How do you look at this? Like, what's your metrics for success in terms of, are you caring about that? I know you have to have some sort of level of care to it, but like, I'm assuming it's impact of the brand of the new gin compared to the numbers sold, or are you having to kind of balance that and the cost balance of units sold versus products bought? Or what's your brands for? How do you measure the metrics for success?
Well, first and foremost, after securing, and I'll correlate this directly to our craft spirit effort. After I've secured the product exactly how I want it to be, and I have found the manufacturing partners that I believe to be our long-term manufacturing partners for that category, now it's to gauge whether or not my gauge on success is whether or not it hits, right? And so we opened distribution in the state of Arizona and conducted a launch event at a cigar bar called Fox Cigar Bar. Shout out to our longtime supporters there. And I wanted to see how the product was received by our core and existing core customers in that community, right? And quite frankly, gin is stereotypically understood to be the anti-spirit for a cigar smoking experience. My twist on its formula and my direction of it was that we were going to build a gin that was, in fact, very complementary to a smoking experience, which we have accomplished, right? So, but the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So, I watched over the course of the evening the retailer be completely cleaned out of product. Nice. And I have a friend of mine that I work with as a partner in that component of our business, and he hails from the alcohol business specifically. And I had no gauge on exactly how successful the pull through of the product was that evening because, in my tenure in the cigar business, I'm used to selling quite a bit of volume if I actually show up and conduct an in-store activation to promote our brand. And we had sold, it was something like 8 to 10 cases of the alcohol, right? And so we had sold, I don't know, about 60 bottles, right? And I asked him, I said, hey, do you feel this was successful? And he turned to me and says, I have never seen anything like this in my fucking life. He said, if I had gone out and conducted a tasting at retail with previous brand projects, I would have been over the moon if I had sold 2 bottles. 2. And I said, okay, this shit works. That's verified. So now we begin to scale, right? Proof of concept is established, and through my lens, understood to be a success, and this will hit, this will work. Now we need to scale. Now we need to achieve new outlets for distribution in key states that we can align the other categories that we're already operating in with this product, and help create an environment where there's a rising tide that will raise all ships simultaneously. So if you want to ask me how I gauge success, I think initially it's it's a gut radar based process, but I also 20 years in this game, I can understand very quickly what works and what doesn't.
I love that way of looking at it. That kind of, you're going and actually seeing it in real time. You're not just looking at a spreadsheet and saying, "Oh, we sold 200 units." You're actually going and seeing the reaction of your core customers, and then you're kind of, you're building you're using them to be part of the journey as well. So you're bringing them
Yes.
into it. And something I did notice on your social media was every time you had a picture up of something, people were like, "Oh, you're just near me. Oh, come and have a smoke with me. Oh, let's go and get some bottles together." You've got such a great sort of community and socialness there. How do you break into what's a crowded market and make your, build a community around your products and make it social to use your products as a community and bring people together? Because not a lot of brands can do that.
Well, no, and they can't. And I got to be very honest with you. I have seen many come and many go in the time that I have remained in business. And it's because they lack one element or another, or there's misstep. There are tragedies in deal making where people disadvantage themselves to a point where they can no longer operate in that space. I've seen it, but I think for the most part, people are just lacking one or more key elements, in their, as it relates to their brand and their product. Now, granted, as an example, when I came into the premium tobacco segment, I was one of the first 3 to 5 operators to be offering a craft or boutique branded product. So, although at the time I was the newest addition to a small cast of characters and the youngest, if you turn the clock forward 3 to 4 years and look back over your shoulder, I was one of the original players that was working to carve out an entirely new segment of a marketplace globally, right? So in that amount of time, while I was fighting to build my brand and my business in that space, it's like there was blood in the water. Now this is a proven proof of concept. This works. Like the boutique trend was activated. Craft brands were having their own micro boom within that industry. And so then people start flocking to the business as they see the opportunity, right? But, there comes a point where there's saturation and a lot of these brands slough off like dead skin. And typically the people that remain are the first 3 to 5 really viable players, and you'll always have people that come in after the drawbridge is up and introduce a viable concept and remain. But if you're talking about power through time and grade, which I think is a devastatingly powerful element for any brand, and something that can never be stripped from you. So the time that you've been operating in the space, I've leveraged that to our advantage as well, and that's ultimately what's helped us. That amount of time is what's afforded me the time to make, from handshake to handshake, from door to door, from virtual hangout to virtual hangout, to all this hand-to-hand combat level marketing stuff has allowed me to build a real rapport with people on a very individualized basis. And those people are the foundation of all the pull through of all of our products.
Because that definitely comes across in your thing, is this brand is an extension of you. It's your kind of beliefs, your attitudes, your identity. And, you're selling yourself as much as you're selling your company, the brand. And people are kind of connecting with you as much as the products. Well, we've definitely got to do a round two, because I think we're just getting into this, because I want to find out more about you as a person as much as the business. But
Of
you
course.
wrote on Instagram where you said, make sure to take notes along the way. Someday your story will become someone's survival guide. I
And it
love that.
will.
I love that way of looking at it, as you'll be inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs to do this authentically and truthfully. How do you think, like, how should we review our journey? And do you use these podcasts as a way of kind of looking at how far you've come and using them as a platform to chase and become better for the next step in your life, do you think?
Well, I mean, I look, you and I connecting is a byproduct of an introduction from a very dear friend of mine and a longtime believer in what I do, Josh. This, you are one of the first people that I've reached out to with the sentiment that I need to do better to get our brand message out there, and I need to make better efforts, because you can be all consumed with the work, which I typically am, you know, and I
Mm.
try to do my best, but there's only so much I can do, and there's only so much bandwidth that I personally have, and the work must be done, you know, and promotion is part of the work, but many times promotional efforts will take a back seat to just the day-to-day management of operations, sales, consumer outreach. I mean, you name it, right? So, um, uh, I think they could. I mean, if I had the time to go back and kind of like revisit interviews over the years, I think you would probably hear me growing up before your eyes and ears, depending if there was video affiliated with it. Um, I do think that they're good time markers. Simultaneously, I think that my mission is changing to be more inclusive of continuous press outreach at this point. So, like, maybe that's reflective of more growth. I don't know.
Because something I really liked was how you seem to have changed from your very first post on Instagram to the current post. You're very much the same person throughout. There's no kind of like, oh, look at me, I'm now like suited and booted compared to the guy in the tracksuit. You know what I mean? Like you are still the same person. You've grown and
I do
you've
want to get a
expanded. And
tracksuit, though. I think they're dope.
I mean, I love how much you kind of give out in your social media, and you kind of like an insight into your life. And you talked about how your wife and your children were the sort of like saved your life, and you've got a beautiful family. And how do you look at that, and how do you juggle being the father, being the husband, because you've got some great friends and bonds with people, and that, how do you juggle that with running the business, being an entrepreneur, and all the other 9,000 things you're probably doing at the same time?
Well, look, man. While while you have 17 plates spinning, right? One is always falling, no matter what you do. And um, part of it is having an uh, amazingly attentive and tight knit team around you to help you carry the torch, right? When the time comes to expand, you know, um, I would say that my family comes first, and they do. However, there are times that my family waits, because they are also part of this mission, right? And they don't wait as if I push them off. They are on standby to resume full family activity, or they're on the road with me, and they're entertaining themselves while I'm at a business function, and then we will reconnect and be together again, you know, because they are also a support mechanism for me, and believe in what I'm doing, and understand it's for our family.
No, it's
Uh,
very well put. I mean,
yes.
so have you used any of your sort of military kind of habits of juggling sort of demands, or is it just like your discipline, getting up, and like you're saying, getting up before it gets light, putting the graft in, day out, getting it done, and just trying to keep your plates juggling as much as you can?
I mean, honestly, yes. It's a free for all.
Great answer.
It's an absolute bloodbath. But what I will tell you is that I've also been making, this is kind of appropriate that today you and I would be speaking on what is referred to as the Next Level Guy podcast, because I'm currently involved in brokering a next level arrangement for our business, and one that I think will be very empowering, and one that I believe, obviously I wouldn't be pursuing it if I didn't believe in it wholeheartedly, but also something that will be reflective of the next level in that specific industry as well. The beginnings of a new chapter in terms of level game in that world. So, and this will be empowering for all other facets of my business and afford me, in theory, because you know what they say, but we would hope, in theory, to afford me more time to focus on creative endeavors and my family simultaneously. So we'll see.
Looking forward to seeing what that is. Because I think this is just the start of a beautiful friendship. I mean, just 2 minutes in, I was like, this guy would be awesome to sit down and have a pint with, go and shoot the shit, but also create stuff and talk about branding. And, I could just see the sort of passion and the intensity you have and everything. And I was like, this guy's awesome. And when I was looking at him, I can never pronounce his surname, Guy Fieri.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's
and you've
boy.
got like Josh Burnett as friends, and I was like, I could just see you two sitting chilling while he's talking about setting up his blood sports and all that promotion, and I was just like, of course this guy's getting on. He's awesome. And then 2 minutes in, I was like, nah, we've got to do a few of these. This guy's awesome.
And look, these guys appreciate what I do because they are also respectors of craft and also have their own craft that they have been, crafts rather, that they have been honing over the period of their lifetime, right? So it's game recognized game with those guys. Josh is a huge craft product enthusiast, and has respect for the process,
I think it was whiskey he was asking me about when we did the interview. I'd love to have him back on. We were talking about all sorts,
He has a whiskey project, I believe.
So you remember when we were talking earlier there about you were saying take notes because someday your story will inspire others. How do you want people, until we can get us round 2 and really go into the nitty gritties and stuff like that, how would you want somebody to use your story? Because you're a great example of somebody who's built their own brand, created using their own identity. You've gone and followed your own ethics, your own habits, your own identity without taking the cheats way out or the fast back. And, you're authentic throughout everything you do. Mm-hmm. How do you want people listening to take this and use your story as inspiration to be more than a survival guide for them, but to be actually an inspiration to start their own journey, to find their own authentic path? I know it's a big question, but
I would want to tell, obviously, a cautionary tale first, because when you do something well, outwardly you also make it look like it's easy. But it's far, far, far from easy. It's just that you do it well. You understand? There's a massive difference. So, someone, I never want to feel that I've inspired someone to follow me down this path that is basically, walking down a very short path to a very firm punch in the face, because the punch in the face is coming. I've been getting punched in the face for 20 years. I just keep standing up, and that's what this world is like. That's what brand building is like. That's what piloting your own business against, and not to sound corny, but against the odds, really. I don't think this ever should have succeeded. And I use the word success with caution, but our brand's success actually defies like the paper metrics, right? And which is a testament to the organic power and the organic potency of our brand.
You've created something that's not just a brand; it's a community. It's I don't know. It's almost like its own species. It's its own kind of organic
It
ecosystem.
is its own organism for sure. That is without question. Without question.
It's like something that you don't even look like you were trying it, and I completely appreciate what you're saying. Is like everybody thinks they can do it because they've listened to podcasts and stuff like that. I mean, what tips would you give to somebody who is starting out on their own journey? And if you look back, are there sort of key things that you think, like cautionary tales, or things that you think people need to know about being an entrepreneur, creating their own journey, their own path?
I think that the key element and most critical is that you set your sights on where you want to get to and you never stop and you never look back. And the path will develop underneath your feet as you move forward. You have to basically dig in, dedicate yourself, start swinging and never stop ever. And every time you got to remember, every time you stop to take a break, which is human and I believe healthy and necessary, and you should never deprive yourself of rest, whether it be, I mean, to an extent, physical, psychological, whatever it is, when you know that you are at a giving point, that it's part of the overarching mission to provide self-care in a way so that you can continue the fight and continue to be effective, you know. But you also have to remember that every time you stop and you put your hand on that, you know, that railing and take a breather, that someone else is blowing right past you. And while you're sleeping, someone else is working, you know, and you got to keep yourself on your toes a little bit there, I guess.
That's very good advice, because a lot of times people say, "No, you can do it. You can just get on with it." And I think people would need to remember that is we all get the same 24 hours. The people who are successful are the ones who are actually putting in the effort. And talent can only go so far. Hard work is where it matters. And I think I lost that in my own life a few times. Like I kind of thought, "Oh, I'm good at it," and I came into interviews half-hearted, and I did terrible. And other times, interviews I didn't think were that great ended up being the sort of top list. So I can imagine what the kind of effort that's needed to go into this on a daily basis, building and forging networks, selling, marketing. Just it must be phenomenal the amount of work to do. And I think that's when people kind of know if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an employee, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want people to take from this? I mean, is there a kind of, like, I know you're probably sort of fed up of answering like, what do you want your evolution of this to be? Is this just a day in, day out? You're just seeing how it goes. You're kind of evolving it as it comes, or do you have an overall mission that you're kind of aiming for?
I mean, my mission is to build our branded business across all categories to a level of health um, that would be enticing for um, a like-minded, um, larger scale company in that space that would share a vision with us to partner and take it the rest of the way in a way that we cannot as a craft and self-funded company.
Because
Global domination.
it's the first time I've seen cigars in ages, and I've been thinking I could smoke. I don't smoke, but I was looking at them and going, you know what? Like the branding's cool. Like I was getting into it. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is. I was looking at the gin, going, I wonder if I can get that in the UK. You know what I mean? It's like 2 minutes in, and I was already feeling part of your kind of your herd, your community.
Well, uh, you may not have to hold your breath for long because the goal is to bring our gin across the pond there sooner than later.
What's the best way to connect and kind of follow along on this amazing journey you're on?
I think definitely first and foremost through our social media. Room 101 brand, Room 101 cigars, Room 101 gin, the Shadow Army, which you will find if you dabble about in these areas, is a small yet vibrant community of like-minded brand enthusiasts that, quite frankly, like to get weird and share experiences and whatnot. So I would definitely look to connect that way. And of course, you can find me, Matt Booth, on my personal social, which I'm kind of the ever-present nucleus and the ever-present connector between all these categories. So I'd go onto the Instagram and I'd dial us up, and that'll pipe you through to websites, shopping experiences, and all things necessary to maintain a viable connection with the Room 101 brand.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.